Okay, let's talk about some storage items to consider. And one of these is fuel storage. So I linked to a playlist in the description box where they're mostly Patrick's videos. I think there's a couple where he just talks about different types of fuel that we store and how he stores it. But he also has videos showing different, individual videos on different storage tanks and whatnot he has for fuel. Like he has one for diesel, he has some for gas, and then he has the fuel right or fill right, I think it is, set up on our GMC pickup, and then he has a separate tank. It's something he's been building on for quite a number of years. You know, whenever he finds a good tank on like Facebook Market that somebody's selling that's good for fuel, he'll buy it up. Having those tanks with the price of fuel going up and continuing to go up, before one of the last jumps, he went and topped off everything he could. So having that tank, that extra tank, I can't remember how many gallons it is. Is it 100 gallons that's in the truck? And he has it, like I say, he's got videos on all this. And then he's got the pump. He's got his own little gas pump that's attached to it. He'll go to the places where he can get the fuel for the best price. Like right now, it's the Tribe out here has the best price on fuel. And so he'll just fill everything up. And if he has to make a few trips to do it and then come back and, he'll use the fuel in his tank on the truck, fill a bunch of stuff up, a bunch of the tanks, and then go out and then fill that tank up again, as well as, of course, the tank in the truck itself. It's really been a blessing having this setup because it can have you better prepared to get through the difficult times of the high costs of fuel. And you cycle through it. Obviously, you're not just going to not use it and let it sit in storage like you would other things. And then, we have several gas tanks here, the 5-gallon gas tanks. We have several of them for gas and several of them for diesel. And we try to keep those all topped off as well. And so it is something to consider. It's not like I expect everybody to run out, especially right now, and buy a bunch of tanks. It's just, again, it took Patrick several years of working on this and kind of building this. And, finding the tanks and getting a good price on them. But it's just something I like to put out there so people can consider it. It's just like with anything else, you can build on something. Just like, filling up your pantry. You can build on that. You don't have to run out and buy, 2, 5, 10 years worth of freeze-dried foods and fill up your whatever and then never eat them. You learn how to can, you learn how to grow your own foods, and you start putting stuff up, even if it's just a little at a time. If you're not at a point where you can garden and can, then you start, even if you have to buy canned goods from the store, buy an extra can, buy an extra package of pasta or beans or noodles, or I already said pasta, rice is what I meant. And start putting that up just a little at a time. Just, if you can budget yourself even $2 a week for food storage, you can do that same thing with fuel. Of course, in that case, you're going to have to budget, $5,000 a week. Just kidding. I'm exaggerating. A little hyperbole there. See, a friend accepted a 1,000-gallon tank of diesel stored since Y2K. It was contaminated with algae and presumed fouled. He ran it through a set of filters 3 times and it came out clear. Awesome. That is wonderful. I mean, yeah, do what you can. And it's times like this why crazy people like us do what we do. It's why we have fuel storage. It's why we have water storage. It's why we collect water and we store it, the rainwater. It's, et cetera. It's why we have multiple ways to sources of light and heat and cooking. well, maybe not multiple sources of heat, but multiple sources of cooking and lighting and, ways to do things off grid for when times get hard and we have to. Or like I say all the time, you guys are probably sick and tired of hearing it. The 100 billion power outages we have out here every year. Again, hyperbole. It's not that many. But I swear we have at least 4 of the power outages a year that are done for their planned power outages for maintenance. And then there's all the many others that are going to be at least twice that much that happen whenever. Usually when you got a lot of rain to saturate the ground, rain country, right? And then a lot of wind because you got storms coming in. They usually happen in tandem. And so the wind and the saturated grounds blow the trees over onto the power lines. This is the most common thing that happens. And going right along with that, which, I already kind of mentioned food storage. Well, I think that, from what I'm hearing, I listen to Zach every so often, from An American Homestead. And, he's talking about meat in the meat prices. And I know not everybody is set up to produce their own meat. Not everybody has a big enough farm or big enough piece of property where they can grow and produce their own meat. We have chickens. I'm thinking maybe 4 cockerels in that box over there right now, and possibly more to come out of the next batch I have right here. Well, most likely at least another 4 out of the chickens back there. Or the eggs that I have in the incubator. And at least we can do that. We can get eggs, so we've got that protein, and we can get the meat from the extra roosters that we will not need. So let them grow, get to a good enough size, process them, and put them in our freezer. But not everybody has the ability to do that, be it space, be it time, be it physical abilities. There's a lot of things that this is where I have a hard time with some people on YouTube, that they really push people and make them feel guilty for not having all these things. If you can do it, great, is wonderful, but not everybody can. We're all in different positions. We all live in different places, and not all of this stuff is possible. So we have to look at where you are at, what's going to work best for you in putting up meat when you can get a good price on it. Maybe you can barter for some beef or chicken or whatever from somebody locally. And, bartering is an important skill. To me, it seems funny to call it a skill because it's not hard to do, but some people see it as a skill because it's such a lost art to a lot of people. The cost, how you barter is like, what is it worth to you to get that? And what is it worth to them to get whatever skill or product you have to offer them? It's that simple. And it's all going to vary depending on the person. So I make my own homemade wine, and I do bottle some of it up to have it ready to barter, either give it as gifts, or to barter with. If anybody would ever be willing to barter, like somebody who are out, some of the avid fishermen. Pat doesn't have a lot of time to go fishing. He does when he can, and we have a lot of fish, but sometimes he doesn't, or some elk or some venison. If somebody's doing that on a regular basis, and maybe they'd be willing to barter that meat that they got for a bottle or 2 of wine. Pound per pound, it's all going to depend on what's the value to them and what's the value to me. That's how it works. So with that said, finding ways to get some meat for the best price you can, whether it be bartering it or buying it in bulk at whatever local store you can. Obviously, we're trying to look for real meat and trying to look for meat that hasn't been injected full of a whole bunch of junk and, as naturally raised as possible, and then find ways to put it up for yourself. Freezing is the easiest, but we can't, as we know, don't always want to depend on our freezers unless we at least have one or two forms of backup power to keep them running. Canning meat is super easy. To me, it's one of the easiest things to do. You just put the meat in a jar, cut it up, skin it, whatever you got to do. Put it in a jar, add water if you feel like you need to. You don't always need to, and can it. 90 minutes per quart, 75 minutes for a pint. Typically, that's what it is for most of your meats, though fish and other types of seafood are going to be a minimum of, I think, 110. It doesn't matter what size it is. That's the thing with the fish. It doesn't matter if it's a pint, if it's a quart, if it's a half a pint. The time's the same no matter what, which I find is interesting when it comes to fish. So I still have several jars of salmon that I canned from that fishing trip Patrick did with his dad several years ago. And every so often I'll pull that out. I did can it in quarts because there was so much of it, but typically I only need to use half a quart at a time to make something like a tuna noodle casserole using salmon instead. And then I can dehydrate up the rest because it was processed in a pressure canner. I don't need to freeze it and then dehydrate it. I can just go right to the dehydrating and it turns out crisp, vacuum seal it into a jar, and then I can use it in a different meal down the road. Somebody asking about, do you have to cook the meat first? Like Gudrun says, I never do. I can it raw all the time. That's what makes it so easy. You do not have to cook it first because it's going to cook in the canning process. Consider it's going to be in there for, if you're doing a quart, 90 minutes at high pressure. It's going to cook. You'll be able to eat it straight out of the jar. And so I just, like if I'm canning a roast, like whether it be beef or I've canned venison and I think elk, just cut it up into chunks, stick it in the jar. I don't cook it first. But yeah, any kind of meat you can get your hands on, canning, freezing, and dehydrating. Remember, if you're dehydrating meat that hasn't been pressure canned, then what you want to do is you want to cook it first, freeze it, then thaw it out just enough to put on your dehydrating trays, and then it'll dry up crisp and light and it rehydrates well. If you cook it and then dehydrate it without doing the freezing in between, it'll be very hard and chewy like jerky, which is fine too. It just won't have as many uses. When I make jerky, I use raw meat. I marinate it, and I typically do it on our wood stove. That's usually, I only do jerky on the wood stove. And that's on top of the wood stove because it's going to dry faster than sitting next to it. And so it's important that it dries a little faster, right? But you can do that in your oven too, in your conventional oven. You can make jerky in your conventional oven. You can dehydrate in your conventional oven. I just wouldn't do delicate herbs in there because you can't get the heat low enough. But for meat and everything, it's great. First jerky I ever made was deer jerky, and I didn't have a dehydrator. I did it in my oven. Low heat, and it takes all day, but it turns out really good. So there's that. But then again, like I said, if you want it to turn out crisp and light so you can add it to casseroles and soups and it will rehydrate and not be chewy, then after it's cooked, freeze it, cut it up first. That'll be easier. Then freeze it, then just dehydrate it, either a dehydrator or oven. And then you can vacuum seal it into jars after that. And leave the fat on. If you're going to vacuum seal it, you don't have to worry about it. If you're doing ground meat, you don't have to freeze it. Just cook it up, dehydrate it. When it's ground, like ground beef, whatever, it does not need that extra step of freezing in between. Okay, so I know I say that a lot, but there's always somebody new that hasn't heard that little trick that I found out by accident of the cooking, freezing, then dehydrating. Okay, and so with that said, I want to talk about this next. I want to bring this up again because in our more modern years, especially after the invention of the pressure canner, people have been taught to be just scared to death of botulism right and left. Well, let me tell you, first and foremost, botulism getting exposed to it, having it get into your home canned foods. It's actually extremely rare. And you would have to be super duper careless for this to happen. But even if you're careless, it's still going to be rare that it's going to happen. And the scare with botulism, unlike, let's say you lost a seal on a jar and it gets moldy in there, it spoils, it's bad. Whereas if botulism is in there and the jar gets a false seal on it, and you won't be able to taste, smell, or see it. You won't know. However, the first thing to understand is that it is so extremely rare that you are more likely. I looked these statistics up years ago, just looked them up, typed in random things to see what are your chances of being killed by a flying champagne cork. Surprisingly enough, when I compared that number to the number of people that would of your chances of getting botulism from home canned foods, on the recorded, right, on the is it the cdc.gov or whatever, one of those sites. It was a government website, and compared them to those numbers. And the government websites, when it comes to that, National Institutes of Home Food Preservation, all that, they're usually trying to scare you to death anyway. When I compare the numbers, you are more likely to die from a flying champagne cork than you are from botulism in your home canned foods. In fact, getting botulism from home canned foods is far more rare than getting it from store-bought foods, or getting E. coli or salmonella from store-bought foods. You're far more likely, far more likely to get sick from one of those from store-bought contaminated foods than your own home preserved foods. Though none of us wants to get botulism, because even if you don't die from it, you might feel like you want to. I've never been sick from it because, well, it's really rare. But I have twisted my ankle just stepping off my deck. Maybe I could have fallen and twisted my neck too. I mean, you're far more likely to die in a car accident. You're far more likely to get struck by lightning and killed. It doesn't have to be this big, scary boogeyman to scare it, to where you're just afraid to even consider home food preservation. With that said, you're far more likely to die or to get very, very sick from the toxins that are in the store-bought foods. The bagged salads or the E. coli meats in the store, and you won't know about it until a recall's been made because somebody else got sick. Or just the garbage that's being put into your foods that you buy at the store. You're far more likely to have health issues or that may eventually take your life from that kind of stuff than your own home preserved foods of things that were raised organically and healthy, and you know exactly what's in them. Okay, so with all that said, there's one more thing I want to say in regards to botulism that a lot of people forget about. That botulism toxin, why does this sound familiar? Botulism toxin, Botox, is botulism toxin. And people are young people in their 20s are constantly injecting their face with the botulism toxin without one fear of that. Why is this being so heavily pushed and nobody's afraid of that? But we're afraid to can our own foods because we might kill our whole doggone family and friends or anybody that happens to walk by our house with the stuff canned in our house, or maybe even look our way. This is something that annoys me so much. I'm not annoyed at the people that have been manipulated to be scared of that because they don't know. They have to learn. I'm annoyed at the people that want to fearmonger to the point where people are terrified to do something that's been done for centuries. And people did that. Water bath canning, when people got into canning, they were canning everything water bath canning. And I've got the charts to prove it. I have the charts to prove it, that it was normal. Even Ball had their own chart. They had, by this point, pressure canners were invented, but people were still water bath canning because not everybody could afford a pressure canner. And so they had side-by-side charts from low acid to high acid foods. Here's the time frame for water bath canning. Here's the time frame for pressure canning. Meats, green beans, etc. If it was this big scary thing, why would they have a chart? And why is it the Amish are still doing it that way today? Why are people in the UK still doing it that way today? You know why they are? Because pressure canners are highly, outrageously priced over there, if they can even buy one at all. And if they can, they usually have to order it from the US. And of course, shipping and all these VATs make it, again, outrageously overpriced. So they do what they got to do. Don't be afraid to reuse a good lid that's in good condition. Don't be afraid to reuse jars that are used to can products. You know, like I don't know when, I think I was in my 20s and living in the Seattle area. The last time I ever bought store-bought like ragu or something. But some people have those jars. What is it? There's another brand, Prego, and they reuse those jars for canning. It used to be mayonnaise. Kraft mayonnaise was sold in regular mouth jars that were good for canning. And people have been doing that for years, but now, oh, don't dare do that. You're going to die. You will die if you can in something that is not specifically a canning jar, labeled as a canning jar, such as Ball or Kerr or even Superb for that matter. So just sometimes you got to do what you got to do. But you also got to make the choice that makes you feel most comfortable. If you are one to give in to all the fear mongering, then do what you think is best. Listen to the channels that only believe in one way of doing things and do it their way. I'm not going to badmouth you or them for that. Okay, because you want to feel comfortable with the food that you've put up. Thanks for coming in and spending some time chatting with me and sharing your thoughts and ideas. Really enjoy this time together. And don't forget the playlist link I'll be putting in the description box down below, and any other links if I think to add them later on. And thanks for coming in. Take care and God bless.